Julius claims to be a Pan Africanist. He wants to remove the borders. Do you not support that, number one? And then number two, I guess it's going to lead to another question about borders in general. Your thoughts around Nhlanhla Lux, who was the reason why you were actually bashing me, because I did an interview with him and DJ Sbu, and you were very unhappy with the fact that I was chilling with him, and he's become a mate of mine now.
With Julius, the issue, he's not a Pan-Africanist, he's an opportunist. And you would say that there were times when we used to make videos that used to inspire people like you.
Yeah.
And I was one of the first Pan-Africanists to start really bringing out this issue of African unity and what it is that the book that was written by Kwame Nkrumah, which is the neocolonialism, the last legs of colonialism, was actually talking about why we need to unite. Julius never spoke about that at any point before people like me started speaking about it.
Sure.
And so he was opportunistically groomed to start talking about that so that he could take the position of revolutionary in South Africa and Africa to shut out other voices that speak like that. How do I know this? Because when I began to make those videos, I used to have videos that would hit 100,000 easily. 200,000, 300,000, 500,000 at that time.
And that's besides being shared on other platforms.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what started to happen is the moment I started making those videos, I got shut down by Facebook, by Twitter, and every platform.
Welcome to my life.
They shut me down. People can't see my videos. People can't find me. And worse still, when other Pan-Africanists would come and ask me to come on their shows like what you have done, immediately after I've come there and we've spoken on the issues that I speak about, they would have their pages unpublished and removed.
Sure.
And then they began to realize there was a problem. But when Julius began to talk Pan-Africanism, they never did that to him.
Yeah.
In fact, the South African media, which is white-owned, which is controlled by the Ruperts, which is controlled by the Oppenheimers, gave him so much platform to speak. Social media gives him so much platform to speak. His pages are never muzzled. His Twitter page is never muzzled. Go to my Twitter page. You'll see that 60% of the people can't even see my post because they'll see that it's written sensitive content.
It's called shadow banning.
Shadow banning.
Yeah.
They've never shadow banned Julius. Now, if you remember South African history, PAC, they shadow banned. In fact, they actually got to point of banning outright Mangaliso. Till today, Sobukwe's voice cannot be heard. It has been blackwashed by even the ANC.
Yes, the ANC doesn't give him much homage. A lot of kids don't even know who that is.
Biko was killed.
And he was the only prisoner that was isolated, I believe, on
Yes,
Robben Island.
and
That's how dangerous they believed he was.
He's the only man who they made a specific law to keep him in prison even when his time was up. Julius would be treated like that if he was a threat. Julius's corruption charges would have been investigated and he would have been found guilty by courts of this country that are compromised.
Sure.
But it never happened. I got to a point where I'm muzzled by the biggest billionaire in Zimbabwe for what I say. Julius has never been muzzled by anybody.
Who's the biggest billionaire? Strive?
I know names. But the biggest billionaire in my country came to South African courts to get a gag order for me. When you are a threat to the system, they treat you like that.
Sure.
When they love you the way they love Julius, when he goes to see the Queen, when there are allegations that Julius actually got given money by the Queen and it was cleared by the Reserve Bank of South Africa that blocks any other monies that come to any other person that they don't approve of, which apparently was one of the major reasons he fell out with Winnie Mandela, is that he got this money, didn't share it with Winnie, didn't tell Winnie about it. This is when you realize that Julius is compromised. He's not a Pan-African. He's not out for the struggle. And lastly, anybody with Pan-African credentials understands that the proxy war for Pan-Africa, especially the soft war, is being fought in Zimbabwe. Reason Zimbabwe is under sanctions, reason the United States declared 3 national emergencies against a small little country like Zimbabwe and declared it a threat is because Zimbabwe has taken land and is changing the very same law I told you, the 1454 law of discovery. Julius will bash the ZANU-PF government that is fighting a war for land that he says he wants to undertake. How does that make sense? And he will use allegations from white media, from Oppenheimer media, to bash the ZANU-PF government without any proof, without any evidence. He's doing exactly what it is that the Americans have done, where they make allegations that Zimbabwe abuses human rights. They don't go to any court. They don't prove the case in any court. They don't go to any international bodies that are supposed to be the arbiters of these kind of issues. They don't prove their case within those courts before they impose sanctions, which should have been imposed by the UN if Zimbabwe was really abusing human rights. The case of Zimbabwe must have been taken to the UN Human Rights Council. It wasn't.
Jeez, they just use the media.
They just use the media, and then they say human rights violations. But yet, while they're saying that, America is one of the only countries in the world that has ever been indicted by the International Court of Justice for funding terrorism in Nicaragua in 1989. They're the only country now that the Iranians, who are under UN sanctions, took the Americans to the International Court of Justice in 2018. And they won that the sanctions that they've imposed on the people of Iran, the Americans are breaking international law and they are violating human rights. Zimbabwe then went to the same UN, and the UN said the sanctions on Zimbabwe are illegal and they are violating human rights. If not, they're a crime against humanity. The reason you got all these refugees in South Africa is displacement by sanctions, displacement by deprivation of water, healthcare, education, and government services because of sanctions on our government. Julius Malema won't speak about that, but he's a Pan